Chapter 87. Using the sea as cultivation base 2. Immediately, the eyes of this cultivator widened. Before he could let out a blood-curdling scream, he was pressed down by Xu Qing. As his body twitched, fresh blood gushed out, dyeing the spirit boat red. A few breaths later, his body remained motionless. Xu Qing looked at the dirty magic boat and frowned. He then took out the corpse-destroying powder and scattered it. Even after the corpse had turned into blood water, there were still no disciples from the seventh peak in the surroundings. It was as though everyone was used to this. At that moment, the sea breeze blew over, bringing with it the stench of the sea and blood, permeating the surroundings of Xu Qing. He then picked up the other party's bag. It was very empty and didn't contain any valuable items. This person has his eyes on me because I had a magic boat. Xu Qing recalled what the round-faced cultivator had said during the day. Every month, there would be disciples who would mysteriously disappear. Tense, he touched his sharp iron stick and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. After that, he took out the brocade box he had brought back and opened it. He found the jade slip that introduced boats and began to read it carefully. After a long time, Xu Qing slowly put down the jade slip. He then lowered his head and stared at the ship with a strange glint in his eyes. "This boat is very astonishing." As he muttered, Xu Qing lifted his right hand and patted the deck of the boat beside him. The spirit energy in his body spread out and according to the method on the jade slip. He transformed his spirit energy into a mark and imprinted it on the boat. The entire ship trembled as though some device had been activated, emitting a soft buzzing sound. Xu Qing immediately bit his finger and squeezed out a drop of blood. After that, he seriously drew a simple rune on the ship's deck. As the rune was drawn, the entire ship trembled with a bang. A mysterious connection instantly appeared in Xu Qing's mind. This was the method recorded in the jade slip for the ship to recognize its master. After he finished operating it, Xu Qing could clearly feel that he and the ship had become one. With a thought, a protective light barrier instantly appeared on the ship. After enveloping the entire ship, Xu Qing finally felt a sense of security. Tense, he lowered his head and continued to look at the jade slip regarding the ship. After he repeated the contents of the jade slip many times, he firmly imprinted them in his heart. The Seven Blood Eyes boat indeed contained extremely high growth potential. Disciples could strengthen it according to their needs in the four aspects of speed, defense, attack, and uniqueness. They could either strengthen it individually or have it bloom in all aspects. It depended on the level of their resources and their preferences. The first three directions were simple and easy to understand. As for what was unique, it referred to special abilities other than spells. For example, it could allow a boat to dive to the bottom of the sea, or allow it to leave the surface of the sea and fly in the sky. Or perhaps, there were some changes where his form was different from the ship. However, regardless of whether it was the uniqueness or the other three directions, there was only one thing that determined them, and that was the material of the ship. Generally speaking, there were two directions for the Seventh Peak's disciples to choose the ship's material. The first direction was having the boat be man-made. They would constantly put higher-level materials, allowing them to withstand more powerful array formations, allowing the ship to advance and become more powerful. This path required one to cooperate with the Second Peak's formation training. In the future, there would be human limitations, but it was still the first choice for a considerable portion of disciples. This was because this path wasn't too dangerous. It was a step-by-step method that followed the rules. As for the second direction, that's using the body materials of mutated creatures as the material for the ship. There's no need for an array formation to be added. Xu Qing had some understanding. Through the jade slip on the ship, he knew that all the materials on mutated creatures contained natural array formations. It could also be said that its talent and might were extraordinary. This type of array formation was known as a restriction. Different mutated beasts' bodies contain different restrictions and different abilities. No matter which direction I go, it will consume a lot of resources. Xu Qing lowered his head and looked at the jade slip in his hand. He once again realized how terrifying the Seven Blood Eyes were. This was because, as a new disciple, the boat he exchanged for was only a level 1 boat. As for the boats of the Seventh Peak, they were divided into four major levels: canoe, boat, fleet and wheel. Each level was divided into 10 smaller layers. In fact, after the wheel, the jade slip even stated the existence of an extreme level. It was called Big Wings. Under the layers of improvement, the resources required, Xu Qing couldn't make any concrete calculations. His initial judgment was enough to make him gasp. Hence, he put down the jade slip and fell into a daze. He then lowered his head and looked at his pocket. Regardless of whether it was the leather pouch or the storage pouch, the remaining resources inside were simply too little. I have to think of a way to earn money. There's still a month before I have to pay a fee for a birth. Xu Qing muttered to himself. After a while, he took out another jade slip and started studying it. This jade slip recorded a cultivation art that the seventh peak didn't impart to outsiders. It was called the Sea Transformation Art. As a top-notch faction in the Nanhuan continent, the cultivation arts of the various peaks were extremely valuable, be it the degree of separation of anomalous substances or their might. In terms of might, it was even more astonishing. It wasn't something that other small factions and families could compare to. It could be said that with the same cultivation, the difference was as great as the difference between fireflies and torches. After studying them carefully, Xu Qing let out a deep breath. He finally understood why all the 7 Blood Eyes disciples he saw after he came here gave him a sense of crisis despite their cultivation not being very high. The level of the cultivation technique determined everything. For example, this sea transformation art had a total of 10 levels, corresponding to the 10 levels of Qi condensation. When cultivating, one had to be near the sea. It would be even better if one was in the sea. For every level of cultivation, one would absorb the aura from the sea, forming a 100-foot wide spirit sea in one's body. After cultivating to the 10th level, one would reach the great circle of Qi condensation and the spirit sea could reach the upper limit of 1,000 feet.